Welcome to A2A Conversations, an ongoing discussion about turning adversity into advocacy. Join us as we explore the power of purpose, service, and empathy, and the resilience we build when helping ourselves by helping others. Now here's our host, A2A founder, Jeff Bell.
My guest today is a guy who really inspires me, and I know he's going to inspire you as well. His name is Scott Fedor, and his story is a powerful tale of overcoming adversity, in part by helping others do the same. Scott is the founder of Getting Back Up, a nonprofit aiming to help those living with a spinal cord injury improve their quality of life. He is the author of a memoir titled Headstrong: How a Broken Neck Strengthened My Spirit. And I am proud to say Scott is a longtime member of the A2A Alliance. So, Scott, we go back a lot of years now, and every time I hear your story, I learn something new that inspires me. And I know that not all of our viewers have had a chance to listen to your podcasts over the years that you've done through A2A. So I want to start by asking you to bring us back to that fateful day in 2009, the diving accident that changed everything. What do you want us to know about that day?
Sure. I was 33 years old at the time, and as you mentioned, July 2009, celebrating the 4th of July holiday with family and friends. Did something I had done 1,000 times in an area I had done it hundreds of times, took a dive into the lake. And for whatever reason, at that moment in time, things didn't work out to the plan that they're supposed to, so to speak. And I immediately hit the bottom of the lake bed, which was only a couple feet deep, come to find out, and shattered my neck from the C1 to C6 and dislocated my vertebrae at the C3 level, and immediately was left completely permanently paralyzed. And subsequently, I didn't pass out from the dive. I ended up drowning in that water right there, and it was out for a little bit before people had gotten to me, yanked me out of the water, resuscitated me, and got me to the hospital. But what the big takeaway, obviously, for me that I've continued to learn over these years, and for anyone, is it doesn't matter how prepared you are or what kind of plan or agenda you might be following, things can come out of nowhere on a random moment in time and just blindside you. And in my case, it wasn't just a significant change. It was a catastrophic, life-altering change that I'll be living with for the rest of my life. And that takes a while to adjust and get used to, but I don't think anyone's ever immune from, no matter how hard we try to plan things out, from the adversity that may strike at any moment.
I have to ask you, how does one process that kind of life-changing news? What was going through your head in the days and weeks that followed the accident?
In my case, it's been a long processing. It wasn't a week or month kind of, all right, take a few moments, process it, and let's get going. The first days, weeks, and eventually into the months, just a lot of sadness, a lot of regret, a lot of why. I certainly by any means wasn't a Pollyanna running around, so to speak, saying, hey, I got this adversity. It's all right. I'm going to face it head on and tackle it. My first beginning of my journey was kind of going through those steps, denying it and trying to kind of bargain, and just it took a while for me to get to the acceptance phase. And I was just a lot of anger, a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, confusion. Of course, there were also moments along the way initially where there were smiles, there were moments for hope, there was pause for gratitude and celebration. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that. But if I'm being completely honest, and someone were to ask me what that initial phase, and again, I don't want to put a time frame on it because it's something that evolved over time as far as
Sure.
my acceptance and progression. But that initial phase, if you will, was just a lot of anger, depression, anxiety, and questioning, okay, what next? Because this, let's face this, wasn't supposed to happen. I was married, 33, vice president of a publicly traded company, and thought I had everything mapped out. So just trying to come to grips with the fact that this even happened was just as hard as dealing with the changes that were a result of it happening, if that makes sense.
It's one thing to accept a life challenge that you now have. It's another to lean into it and decide that you're going to use that in a constructive way to help other people. At what point in the evolution of your recovery did you say, I'm going to share my story? I'm going to see what I can do to help other people who are in the same predicament?
I had a lot of throughout my I spent 6 months in the hospital, followed by a 14-month stint in a nursing home before I actually got out of an institution, if you will. So along that line, I had a lot of people that had come, had visited me, had been in similar situations that were kind of sharing their stories, offering me support. And that benefited me quite a bit. But I remember a very specific instance when I was at the nursing home. I was really starting to make some progress with my therapy. I had a great therapist, PT, physical therapist, who was working with me, trying different things, really trying to get my body to move, not being afraid to think outside the box. And then one day, the director of PT came to me and told me that my insurance had terminated my therapy because, in their words, I had plateaued, and made it sound like unless I'm walking around and moving, there's really nothing more they can do. And talk about breaking your neck again, that just floored me, because the only thing that gave me hope, that got me excited, that kind of I could point to say, physically I'm making the kind of progress I want to, was yanked away from me. And on top of that, here I was, 33 years old, stuck in a nursing home. So those two things, just I realized, this isn't just me. There's several other people that this has happened to. It's going to continue to happen to. Wouldn't it be great if there was a way to do something to fight this, so to speak? And that became the impetus for Getting Back Up, my nonprofit organization, which specifically helps individuals with exercise-based therapy programs. And at some point, ultimately, our goal is to assist with accessible housing needs as well.
And you've
So,
been doing this for about a decade now, haven't you?
yeah, God, when you say it like that, Jeff, it
I
really
know.
does sound like. But yeah, it was around 2010 when I had that experience, and then I in 2011 incorporated Getting Back Up. So yeah, we have, and I'm proud to say how fast and how well it's grown, in spite of the fact that there weren't a lot of resources, deep pockets, or just it was very grassroots driven from the ground up. But it spread like fire, and just by me having my story out there, being able to help others with grants through Getting Back Up, that starts to spread, and the word of mouth has just been amazing, to the point to this date, in that decade, we've helped over almost 200 people,
It's
and I wish we
amazing.
could help more. Unfortunately, we've had, you know, 5 times that seek our assistance, but like I said, we're still growing as well from our grassroots days, but we have a little bit of street cred right now, especially among a lot of these certified facilities across the United States that know who we are. They know the benefit that Getting Back Up provides to other spinal cord injured individuals. So it has been a decade. In some cases, it feels like a couple of years, but yeah, I'm proud of all the work we've done. Just
As you
wish
should be.
wish we could do more, obviously.
Well, we've just touched on the work that you're doing and its impact on so many other people out there in the paralysis community. What about its impact on you? You and I share this notion that we help ourselves by helping others, and that
Absolutely.
part of the recovery process for so many of us who have been through some form of adversity is finding a way to find a sense of purpose through service to others with similar challenges. You
Yep.
have done that, and I'd love to have you share with us what you get out of your own advocacy.
Sure. I mean, it is a common trope you hear that, yeah, you help yourself by helping others, but once you actually do it, you realize how powerful and how true that is, and it doesn't become a cliche or a line. It really becomes in my case, a way of life and a direction and a purpose. And I've being able to, from the selfish standpoint, being able to help people to tell them what I've been through, to listen to their stories. Selfishly, it reminds me that how far I've come, and the fact that I'm now here sharing my story with someone when I, years ago was laying in a bed, thought I was left for dead, and people would kind of wheel themselves or walk into my hospital room and share their stories. And I'm thinking, that's great, but yeah, you don't have it this bad. But then you start to realize how relative it is, to the point where, we all have our own challenges and we all do have it just as bad. So as I started to get more involved in advocacy and shared my story, from a selfish standpoint, it just made me feel great to say, I never thought in a million years I'd be here. And then when you start to talk with these people and you see a little bit of, they relate a little bit to what you're saying, it goes a long way. But then the real powerful payoff is, you continue with these relationships and you start to see the way these people progress, and they start talking to you about, what can I do to help people? What can I do to get more involved? Because they appreciate how much that having advocates along the way help them. But then, like I said at the beginning, they truly do appreciate that. Yeah, as I start wanting to help other people, it's helping me. It's making me feel better. It's giving me a renewed purpose. It's taking this horrible, ridiculously crappy, unfair situation, and it's using it for the good. Or it's finding a way to say, all right, you had something happen to you that you never expected, would never wish on anyone, is just completely catastrophic. But now look at how you're able to use it to just really like help people and make people's lives better as a result of something that was so horrific. And I was able to branch out from my foundation into other, other ways, other avenues of service,
You
which
wrote
I'm
a
still
book?
involved
You
with
wrote a
today.
memoir?
Yes, I did. I wrote a book that was published in 2019. It's called Headstrong: How a Broken Neck Strengthened My Spirit. And initially, I was a little reluctant, hesitant to write it because, like I said, we all it's all relative. We're all going to face some challenges, and I never really thought, hey, my story, it's not that much greater than anyone else's that I need to write a book about it. But the more people I helped, the more people would tell me, you got to do this for others, because you don't understand. Just you sharing your story here has given me hope, whether I realized that or not, as much as it had impacted them. So I kind of thought about it and ultimately wrote the book. And it's really a memoir. It tells my story from up until the accident, the attitude, the mindset I went through my life with, to the challenge of accepting, dealing, and preparing to adjust to a new life with this, and then into, as I said, it was published in 2019. So into a lot of the advocacy work I was already involved with, such was A2A and getting back up, and some other items, and even came back a year later and recorded an audio version of it as well. So it's it's out there. It's a resource that I'll kind of point people to if they're interested, but can't tell you how many people reach out to me because they've read it and relationships formed, and just by helping people that you originally weren't even aware of.
Well, one of the things that you've done so well with the book and all of your public speaking over the years, Scott, is you've let yourself be real vulnerable, and you've just peeled back the layers and said, this is what you can learn from me.
Yep, sure. My book, as well as when I do speak and the talks I give, they can get pretty heavy. And I always tell people, hey, look, I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm not here to get you all rah-rah to go run through the wall. But I do think by me sharing my story, I kind of have a little bit of credibility. I know what I'm talking about. And I just want to share with you what I went through, what's worked for me. And perhaps it will motivate you. It will inspire you to want to help your own situation, help yourself, as well as help others. But my talks there, there's always a happy ending, but they do get a little heavy because I do peel back the layers. I don't try to put on a strong face when there wasn't one there in the beginning. I let them know the good, the bad, and the ugly. And fortunately, there's a lot more good than bad and ugly, but there originally was. And that bad and ugly is such a crucial part of the story that I feel it's important not to shy away from it.
Scott, before I let you go, I want to circle back to something you say because it's very important. You questioned for yourself at one point, who am I to write a book? What's my story relative to these other powerful stories out there? We hear that a lot in the advocacy world, some insecurities around stepping into advocacy because I'm not worthy of being an inspiration to other people. I want you to look into our little camera here and speak directly to somebody who might be feeling that and help walk them past that hurdle.
Sure. I felt that as well. There was this, whether you want to call it selfishness, pride, ego, insecurity, low self-esteem, whatever you want to assign to it. I felt that as well. And ultimately, what I started realizing is just by talking with people, making myself aware and open to others, you start advocating, even though you don't realize it. And it wasn't something I set out to do saying, hey, I'm going to go do this. But it was something that I was kind of led to and introduced to just by sharing my story when others asked, opening up, asking questions. And once you start doing that, it gets easier and easier to share your story more and more, or to proactively want to help others. And that whole idea of whether it's ego or self-esteem or not really sure if you should, it's the last thing you think about. It's not even an afterthought because you get so caught up in the moment. And like I said at the beginning, you truly see how people are impacted and they want to hear your story. They want to know what happened because let's face it, we're all dealing with something. So my suggestion would be, if you do find yourself in that situation, not sure, don't think of it as forcefully, proactively trying to go advocate. Just don't be afraid when asked to share your story or to offer some input. And next thing you know, the advocacy is going to come to you. And it's very easy. Advocacy there's 1,001 different ways to advocate. You don't have to write a book. You don't have to start a foundation. You don't have to go speak. Just be yourself, be willing to share your story when asked, and don't be afraid to let people know what you've been through. And that right there, in some senses, is even more powerful than all those other items I mentioned. So it might seem daunting, but trust me, once you get involved, you're going to want to do more and more of it. And in my specific case, it's given me purpose. And in some ways, I find my life and my direction right now more fulfilling than I would if I hadn't broken my neck. At least now I'm, as you said, I've leaned into it. I know what it is I want to do. And I have the tools and the resources to do it, and it helps keep me happy, keep me going by being able to have that avenue to do it.
I started this conversation, Scott, by saying that every time I hear you tell your story, I learn something new, and today is no exception. I mean, there's so many nuggets of wisdom in what you just shared. And listen, buddy, I just want to thank you for everything you do, not just for A2A, but for the advocacy world and just to make the world a better place overall. Thank you, my friend.
And to you as well as to all the other advocates and anyone out there that is advocating but may not necessarily be part of a group or a community. Just knowing how impactful the work advocacy, the advocacy work you're doing, it makes a difference.
You've been watching A2A Conversations, a presentation of the nonprofit A2A Alliance. Guest views and opinions expressed in this production are those of the guests and do not necessarily reflect those of A2A, its advocates, advisors, or partners. To watch more of our A2A Conversations, please visit us online at a2aalliance.org.